So we're live. Hello everyone and welcome to the Top Drones for Public Safety in 2022 webinar. So we're joined with Sam Deniff today, our Head of Public Sector. We're just going to wait for people to join in quickly. We're just waiting on a couple more people, and I think there's a slight stream delay as well. We'll have to bear with as we go through the chat as well. Today what we're going to go through is the top drones for public safety, as well as the top payloads and software that you can see in 2022 that's on the webinar, that's on the market at the moment. So covering police, fire, search and rescue, public sector as a whole. So Sam, would you like to just introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Tom. My name is Sam Deniff. As Thomas said there, I'm the Head of Public Sector at Copters. So that entails everything within public safety, as well as local governance and defence. Police, fire, search and rescue, private security, all those areas. And as Tom said, we're going to look at the best drone options, but also not just hardware, software, support and training, and everything that encompasses that as well, and how they're going to come out in the next sort of 11 months now. Ready to start yet, or should we give it a few minutes?
Yes. So if we could just have a couple of comments in the chat just to let know that everyone can hear us. This is the first time we're using this software, so we've got Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn that we're streaming over today. So just want to make sure that everyone can hear us all fine. That would be great. It's looking like it's all fine anyway. So let's get underway, I think, Sam. So I'll hand over to you so you can deliver the webinar, and then we'll do a live Q&A at the end where you can ask all your questions, etc. as well. I'll be noted down and I'll disappear just now so you can take it away.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom. Everyone working, you can see the presentation. Cool, brilliant. Okay, well, as we've discussed there, we are going to be looking at the top drones for public safety in 2022. Title there is obviously focusing on the drones, but we're also going to look at areas of software and payloads, other developments that add to a full drone system to give an idea of what the best options are as we move into this year. Some of these are going to be systems, manufacturers, bits of kit that are very familiar to a lot of people who are listening today. Some of them might not be. Some of them are newer developments and things that are going to come out over the next few months. So we're going to cover initially, take a quick look at who Copters are and who I am, just to give an idea of what the company do and why we operate in this space. I'm sure, again, for a lot of people that'll be common knowledge, but we'll touch on that briefly. We're then going to look at the problem. So a really quick look at why drones are so important in public safety. So where they can save money, where they can save time, and where they can ultimately save lives, and why they can help and augment what is done with traditional methods within the public safety world. We'll have a look at drone applications in public safety. Some of these super obvious, like search and rescue, vulnerable missing person searches. Some of them a little bit more interesting and detailed, like internal operations, overwatch at large jobs, and sort of more mission specific and software specific missions as well. And then we're going to get into the main stuff, which is the top drones and payloads for public safety in 2022, and also the top software as well. After that, we will have time for a Q&A. So during the webinar, fire your questions into the chat as we go. I probably won't answer them live because I can't see them while I'm presenting, but send them in as you think of them. At the end, we'll go back across and do a quick Q&A. And any that we can't answer, we don't have time to answer, whatever it may be, still send them in. And myself and Tom will go through these questions at the end and send email responses and messages responses. So everyone's going to get an answer from there. So firstly, Copters. If you haven't heard of us, we are commercial drone experts and look to be your organization's commercial drone partner. So our mission in a nutshell is to revolutionize public safety organizations using drones. What that means is that we want operations to run faster, want them to run safer, and want to run more efficiently. Within that, we mean better cost control, better processes, and ultimately better results. So traditional methods are, in a lot of cases, quite resource heavy, quite time heavy. In most industries, that means money. That's the top and bottom of it. Is it takes longer, so it costs more to do. In public safety, it's slightly different because not only can it cost more money, but it can also be the difference between someone being found alive in, say, a search and rescue mission and them not being. So it's super important that any sort of operation within public safety is as efficient as it possibly can be. So what we do to that end is we supply an exclusive range of drones and payloads. We're not just a drone supplier of one manufacturer, we're what we call drone agnostic. So we'll supply kit from a range of manufacturers. And what that means is we're not just going to recommend this one because it's the one we sell. We're going to recommend the best one for your organization's use cases. So we won't say, well, here's the DJI Mavic. This is the one we sell. This is the one for you. We'll take a look at 3 or 4 alternatives we also supply. You can line them up, try them out, see which one works best, and then go down that route. And we've got all of that in one place, under one roof. And that includes your hardware, software, training, and all the tech support required as well. And we do all that from our office here in Leeds, in Yorkshire. We also do expert training. So not only are we an RAE, which is the CAA's accrediting body to do the GVC certification to be a drone pilot, but we're also off-call registered. We do chief pilots courses registered up to off-call 5. And then we do specific training in, for example, inspection, thermography, and 3D mapping as well. We also have industry specialists in set industries. So I myself target that public safety market, as we've discussed. But we also have a bespoke survey expert in-house who just works with survey organizations, as an example. We have someone who works specifically in inspection and renewables and in the energy industry, and a team within that sector. And the same within education, further education, and other areas of public sector as well. So when you come with Copters, you're not getting a one-size-fits-all approach. Everything we do is tailored to the end client's requirements. We also work with world-class suppliers. As we've mentioned, it's not just one drone manufacturer. We pick the best available out there, most of which you'll see within this presentation, and make sure we present the right solutions for your organization. And as we mentioned, the further training we do includes off-call registered training up to off-call level 5. So it doesn't end with getting a tick in the box. You've got your license, go and fly. We do further training that's going to get you qualified to a much higher level. So moving on to the problem within public safety at the moment. The big one is always going to come back around to cost. Unfortunately, that is just the world we live in. Everyone's looking to save money. In public sector, it is very important because it's your money, it's my money, it's the taxpayers' money that's paying for these events. And if it can be done more efficiently, it's in everyone's interest to make sure it is. So an example of that is something that a lot of people don't quite realize is how expensive, for example, calling out a helicopter is for police, for ambulance, for fire, whatever it may be. Operating costs for that can run into the tens of thousands for a helicopter operation. So what we try and say is drones are never going to replace everything that, for example, a helicopter can do. But if they can be used for a few of those jobs throughout the year, 2 or 3 a month, you're already covering and then paying for, again, the cost of the drone within the first few months of operation. What we also want to do is drop response times. So say you've got a vulnerable missing person that's been missing for 24 hours. You've got teams out searching for them. They might be lost in a rural environment. Temperatures dropping. It's nighttime. This time of year it gets down into the minuses out in the countryside. If you're waiting half an hour for a police helicopter to turn up to then do its search at best, really, that 30 minutes to an hour can be really detrimental to someone's health. It can be the difference between them getting hypothermia or not. So having a drone in the back of a search vehicle to chuck in the air and do a quick recce, pick someone up with a thermal camera, for example, that can be massively beneficial. We've covered the costs and then risks as well. So again, if you're looking at especially the internal use cases, if you're sending a person into a building which has been on fire and is at risk of collapse, or is still on fire, or there's been any sort of natural disaster or any building where you're not sure of gas leaks, whatever it may be, sending a person in is obviously much more risky than sending a drone in. You'd much rather lose a piece of equipment than you would injure or worse a first responder. So that's always a huge benefit as well of using drones, and a problem with traditional methods. So if we move on to some of the drone applications in public safety, and again, this is stuff which is, some of it is very obvious, very overt. Some of it's a little bit more nuanced with what drone tech can add to public safety organisations. As we've said, there are sort of three big main plus points for using drone tech, and that's across every industry. So that's reducing risk, saving time, and saving money. The difference with public safety is that the reducing risk side and the saving time side fall into that saving lives category. So saving money is great, saving time is great, reducing risk is great, but ultimately, if it's not helping to save lives and safeguard the public, what's the benefit? And that's where drones can come in, reducing search times, increasing the speed of jobs, and being able to access high-risk environments without sending in personnel. It also gives an element of flexibility. So you've got overhead support in larger pre-planned missions, which we'll get onto and look in more detail, but also in reactive operations. So for a police operation, if you've got a building with several entry and exit points, if you could put a drone up to cover some of those to save on staff having to be exposed, then that's massively beneficial. You've also got situational awareness, not just in real time, as we say here, but also for training purposes. If you can gather data from an operation, then save and use that to look at how you could have maybe done that operation more efficiently. That's always going to be hugely beneficial as well. So we like to split drone applications in public safety down into three categories. You could go down much more granular than that, but for the sake of argument, there's three main areas that drones are used in. Probably the most prevalent one is pre-planned missions. So that would be using a larger drone system at an event like a football match or a demonstration or a protracted fire or whatever it may be, putting the drone up to sort of watch the whatever's happening at that event, maybe used for crowd control or just managing where ground staff are going. The other two main ones are reactive operations, and that's your drone in the back of a vehicle for a quick search and rescue. Maybe you've got a dog team searching an area, you want the drone to check if there's any heat signatures they might want to look at more closely, or you've got it in the back of a armed response vehicle to put in the air if there's any sort of ongoing situation, or if there's someone who's ran from a vehicle that you want to follow and see which direction they're heading in. And then you've got internal tactical operations, a bit more specialized, and this is specialized bits of equipment that are used by, for example, again, firearms teams to put into buildings and structures, map those buildings or structures out, and see if there's any reason to search that building. And again, it's just about reducing the risk and increasing safety. So on reactive operations, if we look at some of the drone options that are going to come into the forefront next year, well, this year now, this is going to be one of the key ones because there's several variations which fit within the Parrot and Nafi category. So the Nafi USA itself is a drone sort of this size. It's a small compact system, weighs less than 500 grams. You can get it in the air in less than a minute. It is the quickest to launch and quickest to operate in that class. And it does boast just over a half an hour flight time. So the great thing with the Parrot and Nafi USA and the range that encompasses it is you've got top-end security. The drone's built in America. It's all fully encrypted. You've got password-protected SD cards. You even have what's called an SE, which is a security edition, another level of security on top of the standard unit. All data isn't stored on the drone. It can be flown completely data empty, and you can turn off some of the safeguards that a drone pilot would traditionally want. You can get rid of those to improve in safety and security with the system as well. So this is Really important for certain areas of policing and national security, critical national infrastructure, but also for search and rescue because of the fact that it has an IP53 rating, so it can fly in poor weather. The other drones of this class, you don't really tend to get that. So the Parrot and AFI USA has that big tick in the box of being able to fly in not a downpour because it's only IP53, but light to moderate rain and pretty strong wind conditions as well. You've then got the Mavic Enterprise Advanced, and this is probably at the moment the sort of hot topic in terms of drones for search and rescue and public safety in general. Again, you're looking at a 1 minute launch time. Again, you're looking at a very light system. It's just under 1 kilo, so about twice the weight of the Parrot system. What you do have with this is a slightly better camera system. So you've got a 640 by 512 thermal compared to the Parrot, which is about half the resolution of that 336 by 256. So the Mavic is a jump up in terms of the sensor quality. What you don't have is that IP rating, and what you don't have is that level of security that you get with the Parrot drone. Both of these are great options throughout this year for pretty much every area of public safety, so search and rescue missions, anything that's more reactive and less pre-planned. But it's going to depend on your organization's goals, your organization's rules in terms of how you fly and operate as to which one of these is the better system. So if you know you need a drone that fits that category, but you don't know which one, talk to us, talk to me, and we can sort of try and show you which way is the way to go. And as we said at the start, we're drone agnostic. So we're not going to push one or the other on you. We're going to tell you which one we think is best suited and make sure you come to the right informed decision based on which system is the one to go for. If we move on to pre-planned operations then, this is where the Matrice 300 comes in from DJI. Now, we have spent quite a lot of time in the market looking for alternatives to the Matrice 300 for no other reason than we like to have not just one solution sitting in one category, as we've shown with the reactive systems we've just looked at. The issue we've found is that the Matrice 300 is so good, there's nothing else that really ticks all the boxes that it does. This is our best-selling system within public safety. And that's for a good reason. It has a 55-minute flight time. Even with a really heavy payload, you're still going to get up to 3/4 of an hour, 45 minutes of flight time. It's IP rated to 45. Doesn't sound a great deal better than the Parrot and AFI USA. But the key thing here is that the 5 at the end is the water rating. And what that means is it can take spray or rain from any direction rather than just from above. So you can fly this in some really bad conditions, really heavy rain, being swept around by high winds, and it will still operate perfectly well. You've got a wide variety of payloads. So at a minimum, we tend to recommend it with the H20T, which is the one you can see on the system in this picture here. So that's a quad sensor. You've got a laser rangefinder to give distance from the drone. You've got a 200 times zoom optical camera. You've got a wide angle lens optical camera, and you've got a 640 by 512 thermal camera. And then there's loads of cool AI built into this, which means you can object track, you can track people, vehicles, you can track thermal hotspots, you can identify from search missions any sort of outliers in terms of temperature. So for any larger missions where you have got time to set up a system which takes sort of maybe 5 to 10 minutes to set up, it's a bit bigger in a larger case, you can't really carry it across, lug it across fields or fit it in a backpack or anything like that. If you've got the time and the transport to use a bigger system, this is the best one by quite a margin. And as I said, we have tried to find others to bring to market. Nothing competes with this within this price point. So on the payloads for the Matrice 300, as I said, the H20T is the key payload. That is the one that we tend to supply it with in 95% of cases. The camera itself is also IP rated, so it can fit on the drone to fly in poor conditions. You've got really high powered zoom, as we discussed, and the thermal camera and the laser rangefinder. Two other options that we can throw in as a mention are slightly more survey specific. But what we're seeing is now the public safety organizations that have the Matrice 300 are more happy to add on additional sensors. So adding something like the hover map system from Emerson That system plugs straight on to the Matrice 300. It can be used to fly a drone of that size internally, fly it into buildings, into warehouses, and the system will use LiDAR to map internally and use that as a collision avoidance system. This can be really useful for crime scene investigations. So finding items that might have been thrown out of vehicles or finding disturbed earth, that kind of stuff. And then we've got the ZenMuse P1, which is another DJI sensor, and that is just a super high resolution camera, effectively. So if you're looking at mapping, again for mapping crime scenes or gathering evidence, this camera can do huge spaces, huge amounts of area, to then put into photogrammetry software, which we'll get onto, and build maps of areas for evidence gathering. So now we're going to go on to internal tactical operations, and here we have the star of the show for this is the Loki II. Now this is a drone that was built for use by Belgian special forces and special police. It's now being used across Europe, and there are a handful of UK police forces using them as well, alongside some areas of our military, the Ministry of Defence. So what you've got with this system is a fully collision tolerant drone. And when I say collision tolerant, it can be thrown into walls, it can be stamped on, rolled downstairs, and it will just get back up and keep flying. So a super tough piece of kit. If you see one in person, you'll be surprised at the sort of build quality and how tough they are. When we say turtle mode there, if the drone bounces down a staircase and ends up upside down, you can flip it back over, take back off and carry on the mission. You can sit it somewhere and watch and listen. It's got a built-in microphone. It's got a night vision camera. You can attach payloads that go bang. You can attach payloads for distraction. All kinds of stuff built in within this system to make it perfect for use within firearms teams, entering buildings, overwatch, anything internal that requires getting a set of eyes inside a building. This is the perfect system. Talking about the payloads, there are two main developments on the market at the moment. There are certainly more to come within this year. So one that's on its way and will be available within the next few months is a window breaker. So this is a payload that fits onto the front of the Loki II. It can be flown up to a window, it can sit against it, so the drone's flying into it. Trigger it, and it fires a tungsten pin into the window, up to triple glazed glass, will shatter and break. The drone can then continue with its mission after that. Doesn't incapacitate the drone in any way, doesn't fire anything out of it, so there's very little risk of any harm or damage to anyone in the area. The other one is the distraction device, and this is effectively a flying flashbang. Again, if this is being used by a team to move into a building and they know there might be people in a certain room, the drone can go in first, distract, if you like, those people without worrying about any fragmentation like you might get from traditional flashbang grenades, and then a team can move in. So loads of use cases with the Loki II. There are other elements coming with the Sky Hero system as well. So within 2022, we will see a ground-based rover that's going to come in and work with the Loki II system. That'll all be compatible with the same controller, with the same drone, and you'll be able to operate one ground-based rover and one drone at the same time to give a full capability. I think now, so we've got a video of both of these two payloads in action. So what you can't really get an appreciation for there is just how loud that is, especially when it's inside. Whenever we test or demo it, everyone has to wear ear defenders and goggles because it's super bright and nearly 170 decibels, which is incredibly loud. There are more videos of that on YouTube, and if anyone wants more information on it, videos they can watch themselves or demonstrations, please do let us know. And then the window breaking payload. Now that's an early prototype of that, so you can see the drone sits down afterwards and takes back off. The later versions that we've seen are able to continue flying after they've fired, and you can also clip that payload off and then reattach something like the distraction cradle. It all fits onto the same device. Now we're going to look at some of the top software options, and this is all based around mapping. So within this, we've got two main options. The first one is Pix4D, which I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with. Pix4D is at the moment the market leader and probably will continue to be the market leader for mapping software. And we're just starting to see now this resurgence in mapping within public safety. It's always been a world of survey, of inspection, construction, infrastructure. As you can see from their videos, it's all based on bridges and buildings, etc. What we're seeing now is that police forces and fire services are finding it more and more useful to use a drone for mapping structures where there's been damage, comparing it with how it was previously, using it for evidence, using it for insurance-based purposes, but also mapping for training. So here you've got 3D models for scene documentation. That's obviously a training exercise done on an airfield, but to show there that you've got the resource to then use that for training purposes within fire services, fire and rescue, that can be invaluable to get ready for what's going to happen in the real world. And here you can see as well just how easy it is to use software like Pix4D. It does look complicated, and the initial thought might be, well, I'm not a surveyor, so I don't know how to use it. We would encourage you to take a go. It's not as hard as it looks, especially with some of the training courses that we do in-house, some of the extra support we can give. It is something that can be picked up very quickly with very little experience by someone working in public safety. We've then got a similar software, which is DJI Terra. As the name suggests, this is effectively DJI's version of Pix4D. So this software works alongside all the DJI drones. Pix4D is a bit more agnostic and works with a wider range of kit. But DJI Terra has a bit of a smoother workflow, a little bit quicker and easier and more intuitive. It takes a bit less effort to use. The downside of that is that because it's DJI, organizations, especially within public safety, sometimes are a little bit reticent to send all their data to DJI to be used, being a Chinese company. And in those cases, Pix4D can be the better option. I would also say Pix4D has more sort of use cases, more ability within it. So Pix4D has a version called React, and that is built specifically for public safety, where you can scan and build a model within 10 to 15 minutes live to then be sent out as a PDF. Terra is a bit more specific in what it does in that mapping side. As I said, mapping is fast becoming the fastest growing area of public safety. So the days now have gone where a drone is just an eye in the sky for a emergency service, for a search and rescue team, for a private security company. Drones are now being used with AI, with mapping software, various other bits of technology to give huge amounts of data. So we're lending stuff from other industries like survey and inspection that we've got experts in. We're bringing that into the public safety and public sector world. As you can see within this software as well, you can edit it when it's actually the data is collected. So just because you've pulled a bunch of photographs, the overlay doesn't work, you can still pull out data and get quality of this level. So what you've got here is they've pretty much mapped a neighborhood with a drone, and that can be done with something as simple as a DJI Mavic. Ideally something like a Phantom 4 RTK. So all standard off-the-shelf DJI kit, and you can build detailed models of huge areas with that kind of software. Okay, so that is all the areas of software, and we've ran through what we think are going to be the top drones in public safety in 2022. Tom, if we've got any questions, I'll tell you what, I'll just jump out of this, see if I can see any questions. So we've got quite a few in the chat. I'll tell you what, I'll start to work through these. If you see any others come in, put your hand up, point them out, and I'll jump on them. So we will start with the ones that came in first from Stuart Looks like Stuart's asking one of his colleagues there. I don't think I can answer. Do you have drones currently? But if it's something you're looking into, I think it's Jim that's responded there. If there's something you guys are looking into, get in touch, because especially in fire and rescue, same with police really, the easiest way to get running is to be linked in with a similar user. So if you're based near a fire service that is using drones already, the best thing we can do is ask them as our customer, are they happy to talk to you about how they set their drone team up? If they are, we'll put you together and you can have a chat through the benefits. And it's always a case of when you see what that can do, that'll be a big tick, and the bosses will want to move forward, especially if they can explain how much money they might have saved by using drones. That normally gets things moving.
We have a question from Charles saying, do we have a comparison matrix or a purchasing matrix that's helped with the purchase decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Charles, if you have a specific category that you're looking at, so when we talked about the pre-planned mission drone or the reactive quick response drone or the internal drone, if you want to drop me an email after this, or Tom an email after this, and let us know which category you're looking at, we can send you one across for the drones that fit within that. And again, in most cases, that'll be a range of kit, and you can decide from there which one's best for you. I mean, as an example, with the smaller drones, what we tend to say is if you're not too bothered about the security side, so say you're a search and rescue organization, and you're operating somewhere where the weather maybe isn't quite as bad as other areas, then the Mavic Enterprise Advanced will be perfect. If you're coastal, for example, and you might get worse weather, you might want to look towards the Parrot NAFA USA just for that IP rating and ability to fly in stronger winds. So yeah, let us know which category you're looking at, and we can absolutely get something across to you.
We have a question from Stuart saying, to be affiliated with the SAR group, other than a GBC, is there anything that needs to be completed?
I mean, yeah, GBC is probably the main thing. I know most of them, although they could use what's called the A2 CFC, which is like a lower end certification, which I'm sure you've seen if you've done the GBC. You could technically get away with the A2. Most search and rescue organizations will require the GBC, and all police and fire will require the GBC to operate. That's certainly the main thing. But then on top of that, it's the skills in stuff like thermography and using a system for actually using it for search-based operations. So being able to configure your thermal camera on your drone to pick up heat temperatures and minimize false positives, false negatives, etc.
We have a question from Nathan Hall saying he's just purchased a Mavic II for surveillance. Does he need insurance, or is there anything else he needs to be aware of, i.e. legislation?
Short answer, yes. There's quite a bit you need to be aware of. Without presuming sort of the level of training, etc., Nathan, definitely recommend firstly doing the GBC, not just for the qualification side in terms of legalities of operating, but also to understand where you can and can't fly, whose permission you might need to operate at certain times. If your surveillance is on private land and you have the permission of the company, so you're employed by the company to run security, then you're going to have very few issues. If you're looking at running surveillance somewhere that's near public land, or somewhere where you don't have permission, you're going to run into issues. Insurance-wise, absolutely yes, you will need insurance along with your operator ID, flyer ID, etc. But our training team, Nathan, if you're looking at the training, get in touch with training@copters.com or myself directly, and I'll put you in touch, and they can make sure you've got the right training to operate safely.
We have a question from Andy Green saying, Sam, is having the Z15 as a second payload of benefit for the M300? Also, what's the comparison between the Z15 and the GL60?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I say the H20T is the main payload that we configure, in most cases with police and with fire, they'll want some sort of spotlight mounted next to that. So the Z15, for those that don't know, is a spotlight. Z15 is kind of a dumb spotlight, so it's an on or off. You can match it to follow the camera, so when that rotates, the camera will follow it. And yeah, it does a great job, and it's relatively inexpensive, and you can bolt it on next to the drone, next to the camera on the drone, and it's easy to operate. The GL60's got a little bit more to it. There's like a zoom function. You can narrow the beam, etc. It's a bit more powerful. Both are great options. To be honest, it probably just comes down to budget. If you've got the money in your budget for the GL60, why not? It's slightly better and gives you a bit more future-proofing. If it's a case of, you might need to get a couple of extra batteries, etc., I'd go for the Z15 and get the extra batteries in. But yeah, both of those fit really well next to the H20T, and that's a really good setup for the Matrice 300.
Just having a look to see if there's any others. If there are any other questions, then just drop them in for Sam. We'll get some good feedback saying it's been a great presentation. So
yeah, any other? I think the only other one was, is the presentation going to be available? Yeah, I'm sure that'll get sent out to everyone that's involved, alongside my contact info. So yeah, any further questions after this that you've not thought of or not put in the chat, send them to me. Any further info on specific products? I know we didn't go into detail on stuff like pricing and really driven down on the specs. So if you are at that stage, let me know. More than happy to provide. Drop me an email, sam.denif@copters.com. Give me a phone call. 0330 111 7177 is the Copters number, and you can ask for me. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. Any more questions? Anything else?
I think that's it. If there are any other questions, then just get in contact with Sam, as you said. But that concludes today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, Sam.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening, everyone.